Hi there, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Karen Fabian, and I'm so glad you're here. I know you've got limited time, so thanks for spending some of it with me. Whether you're a brand new yoga teacher, currently in training, or you've been teaching for years, this podcast is for you. My goal is to help you feel like teaching can be easy, fun, and a natural extension of who you are, rather than something you have to do the right way, whatever that is, or something that feels like you have to work hard at it all the time. This isn't a podcast where I'll be telling you what to do or critiquing your teaching. Instead, I'll share frameworks, skills, and techniques you can experiment with to see what works for you, especially when it comes to understanding anatomy, cueing, and sequencing. I'll share ideas that may challenge what you believe about what it takes to be a yoga teacher. All I ask is that you keep an open mind, because some of what I share may sound different from what you've heard. We'll also talk about the mindset of a confident teacher, not only because it's such a big part of empowered teaching, but because it's rarely discussed. With that, welcome, and let's get into today's conversation. Hi there. Welcome to Conversations for Yoga Teachers. I'm your host, Karen Fabian, and this is episode 410. I am recording this on June 25th, 2026, and this will go live on 6/29/26. So I want to welcome you to summer. If you live in a four-season climate like me in Boston, I'm really glad that it is summer because it's just so great after the winter to have nice weather. So I hope wherever you are listening from, you have some nice weather to enjoy. Today, what we're going to be talking about is I wanted to do an episode really, really specifically for a certain kind of teacher, but it will apply really to others as well. So I don't want you to hang up if you think this isn't for you. And I'm actually going to start with a topic that is really, I think, really important for everyone to have more comfort level with, knowing a little bit more about, that doesn't oftentimes get explained very well. And so without for kind of being, kind of hiding behind the agenda ish, let's just get into the episode. So over the past couple of weeks, I've been running an ad on Facebook and Instagram. And so I've had about 350 people join my email list. And so I wanted to do an episode specifically targeted to someone who's a new listener to the podcast, maybe because they found me from this ad I started to run in the beginning of June, and therefore they downloaded my sequence template and they're on my email list, and now they're starting to get my emails. And if that's you, and if you made it over here to the podcast, I really wanted to do an episode that was sort of a hello, welcome to my world sort of episode. But if you've been a listener for a while, this will cover some of the things that you might also feel, you might also know as a result of being connected to me and part of my community over time. And so I wanted to just, for someone who's new, kind of give them a sense of like, who is this person? And I'm not going to make it about me. I'm going to talk more about my philosophy for teaching. So that's what I want to get to. But part of that, and I think really as a backdrop to that, I'm inspired to speak on a particular topic, and it's coming to me as an inspiration from a phone call that I recently had with another yoga teacher. And we got to talking about the yoga teaching industry. And you can't talk about the yoga teaching industry without eventually talking about Yoga Alliance as an organization. And part of my conversation with her was really talking about talking about some of the history of Yoga Alliance, from my perspective, being someone who's been teaching for over 20 years, who submitted the first ever agenda for the Baptiste organization to Yoga Alliance, which was in its infancy at the time in 2002. We were one of the first organizations to submit an agenda for a 200-hour teacher training to Yoga Alliance, and that was because I wrote it under Baron's direction. We included a number of things. This was so early on. I don't even think Yoga Alliance had a formed agenda for what a 200-hour teacher training should cover. So I've seen the organization change and shift over so many years. And over the years of running my own program, which is very intentionally not a 200-hour, not a 300-hour, not a 500-hour, very intentionally not, but for which you do get Yoga Alliance CEUs because I am a Yoga Alliance continuing education provider as well as a registered yoga teacher, experienced level. I wanted to speak on this because so many teachers that I talk to know very little about Yoga Alliance. They don't understand what it does as an organization, why they need to even have an affiliation with it, why does it have such a chokehold on the studio system, all of it. So I wanted to just take 5 minutes to speak on that. So this is going to be a primer on what is Yoga Alliance and how does it work and why does it even exist. So back in the early 2000s, there was really no organization that held out standards for yoga teachers. And Yoga Alliance, I personally don't know the teachers who started the organization. I don't even know if you go on their website, if they're identified. I don't even know if they're still affiliated with the organization. But a group of teachers got together and started an organization which is called Yoga Alliance. And with that, they created what they felt were reasonable standards for what does it take to be a yoga teacher. And the first agenda that they created was the 200-hour teacher training agenda. And they created a website, they created this agenda, they posted this agenda, and through maybe relationships that they had, through a network that they held it out as the quote unquote standard. And because the industry had been in operation for many years prior to this date and time, nobody else heretofore had set a standard. So what started to happen pretty quickly, and like I said, I was working for Baron Baptiste at the time, and we certainly did it, is that studios around the country started to submit applications to Yoga Alliance according to the agenda that they had posted and saying, we want to have you recognize our program as a 200-hour program. And here's our agenda that adheres to the standards that you hold out as being required for 200-hour training programs. Will you please endorse this agenda? And so that essentially became the process. And in the early 2000s, many yoga studios submitted agendas like this. And I remember when I did it for Baron, I literally sent it in the mail. This was long before you submitted online. And so what that began was a process of studios all over the world submitting agendas to Yoga Alliance to be recognized by them as registered yoga schools. And with that, those schools paid a fee to be recognized by Yoga Alliance. And those schools then created 200-hour programs for which they charged whatever they charged, $1,500, $2,000, $3,000. There was no limit as to what they could charge. There was no minimum, there was no maximum. They charged what they charged. And from the studio perspective, and I do not own a studio, I have never owned a studio, but I've worked in the yoga industry for over 20 years, so I'm qualified to speak on this. Many, if not most studios knew this was a way for them to really build their revenue. Unlike teaching classes, they could have a per head cost of, or a per head fee of anywhere between $2,000 and $3,000. And even though they would have expenses related to running that program, hopefully it would be a way for them to make some money that would support the bottom line. This is a good thing. This is a good business decision for studios to have this as an adjunct to offering classes, specifically if we're looking at it from the point of view of the revenue. So over the years, this became the standard. Nobody challenged it. Nobody said, hey, is the standard that Yoga Alliance is holding out, is that actually really what a yoga teacher should know? Is 200 hours enough? Is 200 hours too little, too much? Those arguments have been out there for a while, but nobody ever got together and offered something different. And Yoga Alliance essentially became, ipso facto, the organization within the industry that registers yoga teachers. And I really want to take a moment here to make sure you and I are on the same page with respect to this fact. Yoga Alliance does not certify anybody. They are a registry. So if you're telling everybody that you're a certified yoga teacher, chances are you're not. Now, I don't want to get into the semantics because that's not, I don't think, a helpful conversation. This is a conversation about what is happening out there in the yoga industry. Yoga Alliance does not certify anyone. If you call them, they will tell you that. And the reason that they don't is because they don't know you, and they probably don't even know the person who trained you. What they do know is the agenda that that school submitted, but they don't know if that's the agenda that that school actually provided. And so they have no way to know if the agenda submitted was adhered to, nor do they have any way to evaluate the quality of what was provided. But again, no one has challenged this system. So this continues to be the system. Now, I am not giving you this background to make any qualitative judgments about the training you got or the training that people are offering. So if you're listening to this and you offer a 200-hour training and you can stand behind what you offer and know that it's quality and you have the proof to back it up in the form of testimonials and results that teachers are getting, great. But I can tell you from my personal experience, talking to hundreds of teachers around the globe, they are not getting the training that they paid for, especially when it comes to anatomy. And I want to specifically speak to that because that's my area of expertise. And the reason I created my programs is because of what I perceive, no, what I know is a gap in the industry with respect to a standard way that anatomy is taught that it makes it easy to understand, that is easy for teachers to go through, and most importantly, is able to demonstrate proven results and gives them not only the fundamentals of anatomy, but also how to use it in their cues and in their sequences. And so the difference between a registered yoga teacher and a certified yoga teacher, in my mind, is that a certified yoga teacher has worked with a senior teacher in such a way that that senior teacher can vouch for what that teacher's quality is. Now, as a result of teachers working with other teachers who are running programs, that is in many cases part and parcel of the process. You meet a senior teacher in person, your training happens in person, that teacher can vouch for you, or you take a training online, it's run by a senior teacher, that senior teacher is meeting with you online on a regular basis, can vouch for the quality of work that you are doing and the quality of teaching that you are offering. But that's not happening for a lot of people. A lot of people are taking online trainings where they never meet with a human, where no one is ever meeting with them, where no one is ever uh, standing up for the quality of teaching that you are providing as a result of taking their training. Additionally, and I already mentioned this, there are a lot of training programs out there that have the anatomy portion taught by a senior teacher who, by their own admission, they don't understand anatomy, but yet they teach it and they try to do the best they can because they know they have to cover 20 hours of anatomy as per the standards held out by Yoga Alliance. And those teachers are doing the best they can, but that's not good enough. And so this leads to teachers who come to me and they say, I took a 200-hour training and I don't understand anatomy, and I think it's because I'm just not smart enough to learn it. And that's a problem, because what really bothers me, among a bunch of other things, is I don't want teachers to feel like it's their fault when they didn't learn anatomy, when it has nothing to do with their ability to learn and everything to do with how it was taught. So what we have essentially is a completely independently run system, meaning every studio, every entity that offers 200-hour programs are running independently. Yoga Alliance is getting a submission from them, which is enough to make Yoga Alliance endorse them. And they're training people to be yoga teachers. And if the training at ground level does not meet the expectations of the student, there's really no recourse for them. Sure, they could go to Yoga Alliance and they could say, hey, I took this training, I paid for it, I didn't feel like it was up to snuff, I didn't feel like they adhered to the agenda. And Yoga Alliance, when I've talked to them about scenarios like that, have said, we will call the studio and inquire. But there's no formal process for that. So And the reality is, what yoga teacher is going to call Yoga Alliance to complain about the training that they got? Not a lot of people are going to do that. So all is not, right? I am not stating this to cause you to feel badly about the training you received. You received the training you got and you had whatever experience you had. What I want to share this information with you, the reason I'm sharing it with you is so that you can be educated about what is the point of Yoga Alliance. Because the reality at this stage of the game is that most, if not all, studios require that you be a registered yoga teacher at least the 200-hour level in order to be hired. And most yoga studios, if not all, will only offer a training if Yoga Alliance endorses it. So again, it has become entrenched in our industry for the lack of anybody challenging it. Now, in the past 3 years, Goya, the Global Online Yoga Association, and in the past year, there's another organization, the American Yoga Council. They have emerged as an alternative. And you can do your own research on how those organizations are set up. But the reason those organizations have emerged is specifically to challenge outwardly or behind the scenes the quality of Yoga Alliance and what they provide to yoga teachers. So I want you to just understand this is the system. The yoga industry still runs very much on the basis of relationships and people kind of doing what they want. There isn't a certification process. There isn't a standardized test. There certainly isn't any kind of standardized test like there is in the personal training industry. And I've taken and passed both of those tests to be a personal trainer and corrective exercise. I actually just re-upped my certification with NASM as a certified trainer on the corrective exercise side just last week. But we don't have that in the yoga industry. So I want you to know all this so you can be educated as to who is this organization that I'm paying money to every year and what do they actually do for the industry. What they basically do is they hold themselves out as an organization that has standards. And for the most part, most studios fall in line and agree that's the standard. Whether or not they agree it's the standard, they pay them money to get their endorsement to run their program. So what does this mean to you as a yoga teacher? Number one, I absolutely think you should have a relationship with Yoga Alliance and you should be a registered yoga teacher because that's quite frankly the only way you're going to get hired in a studio. Number two, it's low cost to keep your registration active with them. So there's no financial reason to not do that. Number three, it's better than nothing. It's better than not having anybody draw a line in the sand with respect to what the standards should be. And I'm not saying the standards are good, bad, or otherwise. I am critical of the way anatomy is being taught and the standards with respect to anatomy. And I am highly concerned that there are no boots on the ground to evaluate the quality of trainings that happen. But that's not my battle to fight. But I want you as a yoga teacher to be aware of that, especially if you didn't get training that you felt was good. I want you to not blame yourself and realize nobody's actually evaluating the quality of training that's happening, which I know sounds crazy, but that is the system we've got. So where does this leave you as a yoga teacher? Number one, take a training that is registered with Yoga Alliance. Get the information you get. Hopefully it'll be a good experience. Keep up with your continuing education credits requirement through Yoga Alliance and maintain your status with them because you'll need that for employment at the studio level. And you will get good training. There are good training programs out there, and most, if not all of them, are affiliated with Yoga Alliance. So that's number one. Number two, recognize that nobody at the consumer level knows anything about Yoga Alliance. So whether you're 200-hour, 300-hour, 5, no consumer, no student in your class knows anything about them. So it really has no value to the consumer. It's not going to give you a competitive edge. I know people think that that's going to do that, but it's not. At the level of building your community, building your classes, all of that, the students coming to your classes don't know anything about YA, and they're not going to really care if you have 200, 300, or 500 hours of training. What they are going to care about is, are you a good teacher? Do you know what you're talking about? Do you feel confident? Can you lead a class? Are you helping them transform? Like those are the results that people are looking for when they go to yoga, not how many hours does somebody have training. And then the last thing I'll say is my program, my accelerator program, my blueprint learning program, my mindset method program, and my practice portal. I intentionally do not have those programs within the Yoga Alliance spectrum, except for the fact that I am a continuing education provider. And when you take those programs, you get CEUs that you can use towards your CEU requirement. But sometimes people say to me, why don't you do a 200-hour program? Because I don't agree with that process. I have an expertise in anatomy and love helping teachers build their confidence by understanding movement, and am really, quite frankly, very, very concerned that our industry holds no standards for how anatomy should be taught. And I do. I do have standards. I do have a protocol, which is my 10-step blueprint. And that's why I include it in my program. And that's the methodology that I use to teach people. And I'm filling a gap that's out there. And so I want you to recognize, if you do ever decide to enroll in my program, that it's different from the Yoga Alliance process. And the reason it's different is because it's filling a gap. And then the last thing I'll say on this is, I hope that this helped you understand a little bit more about Yoga Alliance's place in the industry. And I hope this information empowers you. And I encourage you to do your own research. Read their website, call them on the phone. If you have concerns about trainings that you are taking with respect to the quality, call Yoga Alliance and say, I spent $3,000 for this 300-hour training, and I really don't feel like I'm getting quality training. Can you help me understand why not? I'm not saying be a complainer, but I want you to understand this is what the organization is there for. A lot of times teachers will say to me, oh, I thought they were just an organization that helped you get insurance. No, that's not. Now, I will say this. As soon as you begin teaching, you must have insurance. You don't have to go through the insurance company that Yoga Alliance endorses. I don't remember who it is. You can go through the Philadelphia Insurance Company, which is who I've had for a long, long time. I do not get any money from them to suggest their name, so this is not an ad. This is just a recommendation. They've been great for me. But you must have insurance. And like I said, you must have at least a 200-hour registration through Yoga Alliance to be hired in a studio. I don't think at this stage of the game there's a studio in the world that would hire you without that. Now, let me also say, if you, like me, teach in a lot of locations that are not studios, they'll never ask you for your Yoga Alliance certificate registration, because they don't even know about it. If you teach in a school or a nonprofit or a hospital or a daycare center or a wellness center or a holistic center or an elderly center or an assisted living center or an athletic facility, none of those people are going to know anything about Yoga Alliance. So it's quite possible, like even if you saw students privately, they're not going to ask you about it. So there's no gating factor to being a yoga teacher that says I must be registered with Yoga Alliance to be a yoga teacher. The gating factor is at the level of the studio, because the studios globally have agreed to adhere to the Yoga Alliance process. So if you don't want to ever teach in a studio, you don't need to take a 200-hour training. You can just learn yoga from maybe a mentor that you hire. So I'm going to wrap up this part of the conversation. And again, I want you to know the spirit within which this is being shared. I am not saying Yoga Alliance is good or bad. I am simply informing you about how it works, because I have too many conversations with teachers and they really know very little about how the organization works, why it started, how it started, and what the infrastructure is. And I also want to make a distinction between my programs and hours-based programs, because I firmly believe your level of confidence as a yoga teacher has very little to do with the number of hours that you were trained. Now, if you have any questions on any of that, just get in touch with me and I'm happy to have a conversation with you. Now, back to the other part of this conversation, which is to welcome you if you're new to the podcast. Now, having said that, if this is your first episode, I came in kind of hot with this topic. So every week is not like this. Some weeks we start out with like an easy topic that's not maybe, as hot as the one we just went into. But hey, you know what? Sometimes you have to talk about the stuff that people don't want to talk about because it's important. And that's why I started there. But generally speaking, if this is your first time listening to the show, welcome. And if you are new to my list because you came in via the ad where you got the sequence template, I want to welcome you to my community. And I want to just use this as a springboard to say, you know, kind of like what we were just talking about a second ago, why is anatomy taught in such a confusing way? And why do I choose to focus on that? Well, I choose to focus primarily in all of my stuff, whether it's here on the podcast or on my social media channels or resources that I create for yoga teachers. I choose to focus on anatomy because it seems to be the most obvious thing you need to know well in order to be a good yoga teacher because, hey, you're teaching movement. But yet, so many yoga teachers tell me it's just really hard to learn. And the reason it's taught in such a confusing way is because number one, it's often taught by people who don't understand it by their own admission. And when you don't understand something well, you can't teach it well. You have to know something well to be able to pull from it as a subject. What are the things that are important to share with people? And how can I make it easy for people to understand? So that's one of the things that is a superpower of mine. And that's why I like to focus on anatomy because I can do that really well. And I love anatomy. I don't get freaked out about it. I don't think that, it's hard to learn. I love learning about anatomy. And so I've spent the better part of my entire life in my corporate life and my healthcare life when I worked in hands-on healthcare and hospital settings, focusing on anatomy and movement. And so when I started teaching yoga, that's where I naturally gravitated to in terms of learning, in terms of my teaching, how my classes were styled. And the reason anatomy is taught in such a confusing way is because it's such a big subject. And when it's a big subject and somebody doesn't really understand it that well, they're not sure what to teach you. And so the reason I'm having this part of the conversation is because I want you to let yourself off the hook. I know you're out there thinking, I'm not smart enough to learn it. I tried in my 200 hour and it didn't stick. And I'm here to tell you there's very little to do with you. And so the reason it's taught in a confusing way is because it's oftentimes taught by people who don't understand it. And it is a big subject. So you really need to know it well in order to know what are the important things to share with yoga teachers. Because, for instance, I've had doctors, physical therapists, occupational therapists, massage therapists, EMTs in my trainings. And they'll say to me at the end, oh my God, Karen, I understood anatomy, but I didn't understand it for teaching yoga. See, it's a niche application. It's not a general application or a clinical application. And that requires another level of skill from the teacher as well. So that's why it's taught in such a confusing way. Now, why do so many teachers lack confidence? And this is another really important topic for me to discuss, especially if you're new to my community. Well, the reason so many teachers lack confidence is related to what we're talking about right now. If you didn't get good training around the application of anatomy to your teaching, and you walk in the room, and that's a huge part of what you're doing, how are you going to feel confident? So again, this is not me making you feel badly. This is not me bashing the training you took. This is me helping you make sense of what the heck is going on. Because again, for a lot of teachers, they're in their classes freaking out, feeling like this is like way harder than I thought it was going to be. Why am I being triggered all the time? Worried about the beginner in the front row, worried that this other person's going to get hurt. Well, it's no wonder. Like, I hope you're saying to yourself, now that you're hearing this part of the conversation, I hope you're saying to yourself, oh, now I get it. Nobody taught me about anatomy and how to apply it to my classes. No wonder I'm getting triggered when I go teach my class. It's to let you off the hook so that you can, in your mind, give yourself a break and get into the mental space of now I can actually focus on doing something about the problem. But you can never do something about the problem of lack of confidence when you're constantly blaming yourself for not having confidence. So that's why it's an important thing for me to cover. Number three, why did I create Bare Bones Yoga? Well, I created it as a business model to help me reach more teachers in a really specific way, which is the way I'm talking with you about now, helping them understand movement so that they can feel more confident teaching their classes. That literally is my elevator pitch. That literally is my snippet. If I had 5 seconds with you online at Starbucks and you said to me, why do you do what you do? That's what I would say. And so that's why I created my business. Now, of course, over the years, it's morphed into lots of different things. And at this point, it's almost like a media company where I'm constantly creating content across different channels on the internet, the podcast here, almost 500 episodes over 6 years of recording. I am creating literally a media company that is all around yoga teacher education. Now, out of that comes some of my programs. And my greatest joy is working with teachers just like you, one-on-one, helping you build your confidence. I will never be the kind of teacher who just sends you off to a link, takes money from you, and then never talks to you. I will never be that kind of teacher trainer. I am always reaching out to the teachers in my program, even the ones that say to me, hey, I enrolled. I just want to be left alone. I'm just going to go through it in my own time. I don't need to take advantage of the coaching calls. Don't bother me. Even those teachers, usually like once a month, I'll just send them an email saying, hey, I'm here. If you have any questions, let me know. So I make that distinction because from a business model perspective, it'd be way easier for me to just say, click this link by and then see ya. I'm never going to talk to you. But that's not what gives me joy. What gives me joy is working with teachers one-on-one and seeing the light bulbs go off. And teachers will say to me, how come I never knew you before? How come I never knew about your program before? I wish I enrolled in this years ago. Why do I teach differently? Well, I teach differently because, and this is kind of what I alluded to before in terms of my superpower, it's making things that are difficult about movement easy to understand. And so the difference to teachers is it's not about hours, it's about results. It's not about hours, it's about transformation. It's not about hours, it's about getting my questions answered, building the skills I actually need. And so, that from a high level perspective, like if you're new to my community from that ad, and this is your first time listening to the podcast, if you're willing to stick around, give me a couple more episodes to get to know you a little bit better. I mean, obviously, I can only get to know you better if you send me a DM or an email and let me know about you. But if you listen to a few more episodes, you're sure as heck going to get to know me a little better. And then you can decide, am I for you or not? Or you're not sure. But certainly after listening to one episode, I would think you'd hopefully be willing to, maybe hang out for a couple of more. So if you're willing to stick around, read the emails, connect with me on Instagram and TikTok, listen to some podcast episodes, you're going to get a lot of quality information about movement and how to apply it to your teaching. And sometimes here on the pod, I actually go into anatomy lessons. Sometimes I have just conversations with you. So like this one doesn't really cover anatomy per se, but I have, over 400 episodes. You can find plenty of episodes that break down anatomy, different parts of the body, different parts of teaching, cueing, sequencing. So just scroll through and you'll find plenty of those. But one of the reasons I love podcasting as a platform is because it's a really kind of close way to get to know somebody, because all you're doing is listening to me as you're walking around or doing whatever you're doing as you're consuming this episode. And so there's no visual. So sometimes it just kind of hits different, and it hits almost more in an impactful way than if you were watching me talk in a video. So if you're willing to stick around, you're going to get good quality information that's practical, that will help you build your confidence as a teacher. Now, I want to end this episode by just relating, and I know she's going to listen to this episode, so she's probably going to recognize this is about her, a success story, a teacher that enrolled in the accelerator program, and she recently got hired to teach at a studio that she aspired to teach at. And she taught a class that was a little bit outside her normal style of class that she typically teaches, but because she had a good base of understanding in part from their programs because she took their hours-based programs and also from my accelerator program. She really felt well armed to go into this style of class and teach it and really feel confident she could. And she did it and she felt great. And when I talked to her on the phone, she was just, even though I couldn't see her, she was just smiling ear to ear. Actually, we had one conversation where we were on Zoom so I could see her smiling from ear to ear. And, I think this is a testament, and she did specifically say, but for your program, I wouldn't have understood anatomy as well. I wouldn't have understood how to share it in my cues and sequences. And that was like a big part of the transformation for me. And so I want to just bring that up to show you like this is what it's about. It's about walking into your class and really feeling like you're doing a great job. Not because anybody tells you you're doing a great job, but because you know you're doing a great job. And that level of detachment from your students is what I firmly believe is required in order for you to really find joy as a teacher. Because as soon as you connect how you're doing with what they say, you're doomed because there's no way you're ever going to please everybody that comes to your class. And so, what a huge part of the mindset work I do with yoga teachers in the program is helping them create that healthy sense of detachment and really start to lean into what they can control. You can control how well you know the sequence. You can control what sequence you're teaching. You can control how you hold yourself in the room. Like, are you practicing with them or are you doing the walk and talk? Are you doing a hybrid? What's going on? You can control how you react to different things that happen in your class, like the beginner in the front row, like the person that leaves early, like the person that's doing their own practice. You can control how well you understand anatomy so that you can help your students who are out of alignment. Like, these are all the things you can control. And in my view, the only thing we should be thinking about, quite frankly, is what are the things that we can control and get really, really good at. Knowing that the nature of teaching yoga is we open the door, people come in, we don't know them, we don't know what they want. So why am I going to put the focus on what they want? Why don't I put the focus on what can I offer that I know really well, that I do really well? That's where I want the focus to be. So I know this might sound really different from what you've heard, especially if you're new to my show, but this is what I'm about. I'm not about falling in line with the regular party line because honestly, I don't think it's really served yoga teachers. The worrying about students, the asking for feedback, all of that particular aspect of teaching, I just don't agree with. So again, I'm, you know, not the teacher for everybody. I'm not the podcaster. I'm not the content creator. I'm not the teacher trainer for everybody. But I think what a lot of people say to me when they listen to the show, when they watch the videos is, wow, I've never thought of it that way. And one of the big things that I really love doing is helping yoga teachers see that the beliefs they're holding about teaching are really holding them back. Not because I'm trying to prove them wrong, not because I'm trying to convince them, because I'm simply looking at things really differently than a lot of yoga teachers in the world. And by having conversations with teachers and gently challenging the beliefs they have around things like, well, I need to practice with my students. I need to mirror my students or they won't know what to do. I need to change my sequence every week or they won't like my class. Like all of those things are beliefs that are perpetuated by the narrative out there in the industry. In 2025, I was interviewed on more than 50 podcasts, and I had an opportunity because I was in the guest seat to speak on this at length. But I do talk about this kind of stuff a lot on my own show because not everybody listens to those other episodes. If you are curious about some of the times that I was a guest on somebody else's podcast, you can go to my website and you'll see I have a whole page devoted to the episodes that I did when I was the guest. And so, you know, if this does resonate with you, stick around. You're going to get a lot more of this. And if it doesn't, I wish you all the best. And I hope that you find the path and the joy of teaching that is what you are hoping to find. So, with that, I'm going to wrap up this episode. I want to thank you so much for listening to the end. If you have any questions, you can always get in touch with me. DM on Instagram is the best way. And if you just want to share something that came to mind when you were listening, I would love to hear it. I'll just say in closing, I personally respond to every email, every DM, every comment. I use no AI, I use no automation in terms of replies, emails, DMs, anything like that. So every single comment, reply, email, response is coming from me. All right, that's it for this week. Have a good week ahead, and I'll chat with you next time on Conversations for Yoga Teachers. Namaste. Thanks so much for listening. If this episode got you thinking about a current challenge you're having in your classes or gave you ideas that connect to how you'd like to teach, I'd love to hear from you. I know a lot of teachers try to figure things out on their own by reading books, listening to podcast episodes, geez, even mine, or watching videos on social media. And while those things can be helpful, they don't actually solve the problem. What I've seen in my work with teachers is that problem solving and breakthroughs happen when you reach out for help and get one on one support, not in an hours based program, not in a group training, but in a setting where what's going on with you is the focus. If this sounds like the kind of support that would make a difference for you, send me a message on Instagram at Barebones Yoga or email me at Karen@barebonesyoga.com. Just include the word podcast and tell me what's on your mind, your biggest challenge right now, or something you want to do next but aren't sure how to get started. I'll reply back with a couple of specific things you can try, and if it makes sense, we can hop on a call as well. You don't have to figure it out on your own.